President Lagarde, just to be clear, because you just said that the Governing Council did not discuss APP, I was wondering, was there any discussion about increasing or adjusting the size and composition of PEPP, since that's something that you mentioned the ECB stands ready to adjust, and it's something a lot of economists are expecting at the moment. And my second question is, what was your rationale for not cutting interest rates today, given that the rate on your new pandemic emergency longer-term refinancing operations seems to effectively act as a rate cut in the MRO rate by 25 basis points? Thank you.
Okay, on your first question relating to the pandemic emergency purchase program, let me just remind you that it's a program that is a standalone, very exceptional program that is intended to address the issue of the pandemic. So it is unlike any other program, which is why it was targeted, it was temporary, and it was flexible. I remind you that the life of that PEPP is going to be determined by the Governing Council. No, it will not end earlier than the end of calendar year, but depending on the length of the crisis, and this will be the determination of the Governing Council, it might be extended further than the end of 2020. It is also not the only program that we have. We have purchase programs, including the 120 billion euros that were decided on March the 12th, and we have our recurring monthly 20 billion euros program that is also in place. So let's not just focus on PEPP, which is very specifically designed, but let's make sure that we understand the whole firepower that the ECB has available, which is north of 1 trillion euros. Now, on PEPP, I just want to take you to exactly the wording that we have, which relates to the flexibility. But from memory, what was decided, and it was the fruit of significant discussions, all in the light of the exceptional circumstances that we were going through, we have very specifically the fact that to the extent, and I quote, that some self-imposed limits might hamper action that the ECB is required to take in order to fulfill its mandate, the Governing Council will consider revising them to the extent necessary to make its action proportionate to the risks that we face. So that's a very clear indication that if it is so necessary because our action is impaired by those self-imposed limits, we will revisit them. And you know that the legal act was published shortly after that, which distinguishes very clearly the APP holdings from the PEPP holdings. We believe that we have to make full use and continue to make full use of that flexibility. And that applies across classes of assets, it applies across jurisdictions, it applies across time. So we will use that flexibility full-fledged. Indeed, we stand ready to revisit, to examine, and as is mentioned very clearly in the introductory statement, to calibrate and to adjust the size and the composition of PEPP in size, in length, in order to make sure that our monetary stance and our monetary policy is properly transmitted. On the interest rate, you know, we look at the bulk of what we've done since early March, and we believe that between the massive liquidity facility, between the revised and much improved TLTROs, with the enlarged pool of collaterals from which banks can draw, combined with an interest rate that itself was already at low level, we have the combination as a package to actually address the current circumstances. And it shows in the results. It does show in the results. I think the bank lending survey that was published a couple of days ago is absolutely explicit in that respect. The way by which yields on many of the government bonds has evolved over the last few weeks is also indicative of the action that we take. We have used flexibility when it was necessary. We will continue to do so, believe me.